As I was coming home that night, that was one of the toughest things I ever had to do in my life. I was going to confess to my wife that I'd been having an affair. There wasn't a place in my life that wouldn't have been affected by this revelation.
Gary hid his secret for 3 years. The other woman was his wife's best friend.
So what ended up happening was we just one baby step after another, and we got a little bit more intimate and a little bit more intimate, and eventually it fell into a sexual relationship. I didn't think we were vulnerable, but that's where it ended up.
A co-worker confronted Gary about his sin.
And he sat me down one day and he said, Gary, I think you're having an affair and you really need to do something about this. It was the perfect opportunity. God was leading me there and shouting and saying it was time to do something. And I agreed at that point. I said, you're absolutely right. I picked up the phone and I called my senior pastor, and he agreed to meet with me. So on my way home, I stopped by his office and we talked, and he said, I confessed everything to him. I found myself just at the pit. I was at the pit of brokenness. I remember going, God, what am I doing? How did I get here?
The worst was still to come.
When Gary walked through the door that night, I could tell by one look on his face that something horrible was wrong. And I remember thinking that somebody had died. But he came and he sat on the bed and he said, I've betrayed you.
I confessed everything to Mona and reassured her that I was here to stay, and if she were willing to work with me on this and try to get through this, that I was here for the duration if she would have me.
In making that confession to his wife, Gary felt an incredible weight lift from his shoulders. But at that point, Mona had a decision to make.
He asked me if I wanted a divorce. I asked him if he wanted a divorce. Neither one wanted a divorce for a lot of reasons.
Mona knows she wasn't to blame for the adultery, but she does admit she shared responsibility for their failing marriage.
We didn't think that there was anything horribly wrong, just things that we didn't have time for. And in retrospect, we didn't make time for us.
Yeah. The priorities in our life kind of slipped a little bit. I think that we started thinking about everything else instead of ourselves as a couple. Obviously, this was my fault. I'm the one that did this. It's not that we didn't have issues as a couple. But don't get me wrong here. There is never an issue big enough that would ever justify adultery. That needs to be said and underscored right here.
They were finally talking about the affair and dealing with it. They also knew they needed help.
We desperately wanted to be able to sit across the table from another couple that could look us in the eye and say, you can heal from this. You can make it. It is possible. Because quite frankly, we didn't know if it was possible, and we certainly didn't know how to do it.
Gary and Mona persevered. They spent time in counseling and got help from another couple. But it wasn't easy.
The forgiveness issues were huge, not only with Gary, but with my friend. And I struggled with those for a long time, and God took me back to the Word and said, you best learn what I have to say about forgiveness because you've got some wrong ideas. And that took time. It would have been easier for Gary and I to split up at the time than to go through the healing process we did, because it's a lot of hard work.
More time together meant more time to heal, and that's just what their marriage needed.
I am 100% accountable to her, and that, that I tell her, where I'm going or what I'm doing. And so I think that helps. I know that helps her to rebuild the trust in me.
We're wiser now. When there are issues, and there will always be issues, because Gary and I are two individual human beings, right. And we are not perfect, and our relationship is not perfect. But the difference now is that when we encounter issues, we deal with them, we recognize them earlier, and we don't just shove them under the mat because it's a little uncomfortable, and we're both more willing to give.
It's been more than a decade since the affair. Today, Gary and Mona work together at their advertising agency, and they've also started a support group for couples recovering from adultery.
The world would have them throw it away. Satan is a great deceiver, and the world out there says, throw it away. You can't make it through this. This is too tough. You can't get through this. You can. And we are here to prove that. Mona and I have been through this, and And they can. So if they hear anything out of this interview here today with us, just know that there's a loving God. Jesus Christ is just willing to heal their relationship.
And not only can they make it through, but it's worth all the pain.
Absolutely.
And the work and the effort it takes. Maybe the only reason you would even consider doing that is because you believe in God and you know that would be the desire. That's okay. You can start there. Mm-hmm. And we would just encourage you to recognize that there truly is hope for healing. It can be done, and it's worth it.